I mean, we've been sitting around it for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line, and we were just ignoring the fundamentals. Inflation, people feeling like that they were barely able to tread water at best. That was the fundamentals of the election. And so I think that both parties
He probably
should always
voted
look
for
at the
Trump.
results of an election and figure out what went right and what went wrong. But I think for all of us who cover elections and talk about elections and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
There you go.
I think we have to listen to everybody, actually. I think that I've been saying this whole time, I think the polls did not have it right? Like the spread in some of these battleground states are a little larger than some, not as close as we thought it was going to be. We thought we were going to be counting. I mean, it hasn't been called yet, but the likelihood that he gets to 270 is highly probable. The people who voted for Kamala Harris are struggling too. They're feeling ignored too.
Good.
A Republican's pain is no greater than less than a Democratic's pain.
Yeah, okay, sure, you weren't saying that.
Where when I say you're doing this, we can point and be like, you're the loser, I told you so.
Yeah.
Or we can do what Donald Trump said, which I believe I have the right to feel skeptical of, that he wants to unify this country. Actions speak louder than words.
That's the opposite of what I'm saying. And I think for Van and for you and for Axe, I mean, I've been on the losing side of tough nights here and in my professional life. It's not easy to lose a race like this. One of my most crushing nights was 2012. I know it was one of your best, and one of your best because we were there in the same state together. And so I understand, and I do think that the new president has a responsibility to make the whole country feel like they can be part of a more optimistic future. I do think the way this campaign was run was basically on. The Democrats thought there were enough people who hated Trump or were willing to fear him
exactly
to win the race, and it turns
this
out
guy's at least making sense.
Not being Donald Trump in the eyes of the American people.
That's what they thought they would.
How Democrats are going to react? They've been told Trump is a modern day Hitler, or at least he's a fascist. And now Kamala Harris, I suspect, is going to have to wake up in the morning and concede to that person, and then she's going to have to go to the Senate and certify the election, and
which she will do.
And she'll do that. And I'm a little concerned about an election in which half the country was conditioned to believe that the person who just won the national popular vote was going to be a dictator, eliminate the Constitution,
exactly,
and so on and so forth. So
can I say something about that?
We have to.
Can I say something about that? You guys are.
Aftermath of that argument.
The thing I think is most important to remember is
that guy's speaking sense.
A Hitler lover weren't Democrats; they were Republicans. People who said that he was a fascist weren't Democrats; they were Republicans who worked for him. So it's not just these elite Democrats over here. You know,
some of them maybe.
You had a pretty broad consensus from Chomsky to the Cheneys. That was very, very concerned and remains concerned. And so
the Cheneys really.
Us to stop calling names. I think it's up to him to, as Allison said, the deeds show that he's not going to be those.
Well, you said it's not just
they're all in bed together. That's what people don't get.
And when I look at
that's what these people don't get.
How do you look at these
Bush, and all those people.
Basically said
it's Republicans and Democrats. That's why people like
immigration, or enough of what you did to us during COVID, or enough of whatever. And so that's always been.
They went for Trump because at least he's not as controlled.
Led by the elites, the experts, the institutions, whatever. And so he's never going to get along with the.
I mean, Bush is the one that literally.
Like the people agreed with him.
Scott, look. First of all, I'm always willing to be introspective about
claimed weapons of mass destruction that wasn't there.
These things and how we think about them.
Got everybody against people in the Middle East. I agree with you, Iran.
How we talk about polls is a discussion that we ought to have.
Because they did that on purpose. to go to war.
You sat on this, maybe at this very table in January of 2021, and you were compelling and moving because you are someone who believes in the institutions of this democracy and in integrity and so on. The reason that people
My hand's shaking, sorry.
worried and wary about Donald Trump is because of the way Donald Trump has behaved when he was president, when he was after he was president, and during this campaign. And how many times do we have a discussion about his message as related in his
I hope he does better. I do, and I think that the people around him are
things that he says about jailing his opponents and shooting his opponents and so on. It's not like people make that stuff up.
Yeah, well, they actually tried to shoot somebody. Oh, actually, they did shoot him. So, like, these guys are just sad.
Of the American people, and to not indulge in the kind of craziness that we sometimes heard from him.
It's like, oh, where's my remote? I mean, it's like a red wave.
Well, look, we're thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be in Pennsylvania. We actually recorded an episode of Joe Rogan this morning, so we started out in Austin, Texas.
Where's my remote? Sorry. I love watching the news anchors. Here. I'm watching the news anchors. I might watch The View today. I'm like wearing a swimsuit for no reason. I really thought that he was going to lose because I thought they were going to pull some crap. I had a couple different theories. I really think I don't think it's going to be easy for him the next 4 years at all. And I think they almost handed it to him for that because I believe we're in a recession. This is my opinion, is that all those numbers that they compute, not accurate.
Well, we are right here at home tonight, JD.
And I believe
surrounded by so many great patriots who love our country.
America's broke, and
surrounded by many men and women who have worn the uniform as we have. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
But hey, I do respect RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. I mean,
my name is David. I'm a 3-tour.
They're back, and I really think he's gonna have a better team of people, and he knows what he's getting into, and especially with the big pharma. So where did that remote go? I love watching them cry. These like commentators are just stunned because they're the ones in the media. They're getting fed this news story every day, and it's like the Americans spoke and said what they're sick of it. They don't like the leftist far left agenda with what they're doing with.
David, I appreciate the question, and it's an important one, and thank you for your.
And no, there's a lot of like Republicans that are not good either. And the people are waking up to that. Where is my remote? Here.
That's exactly what we're going to do.
People are finally like wisening up,
You know, David, like President Trump, I spent a lot of time with the families of the 13 brave Americans who died at Abbey Gate.
I'm trying to find okay, that wasn't CNN Live. That was just. Oh, AB, here it is. AP has called it. Look how miserable these people are. They're like holding back tears. They all voted for Harris. So it's like so hard for them to report.
Electoral votes from New Hampshire and 10 from Minnesota, which the AP called for the vice president just moments ago as Trump was.
Minnesota was obvious.
One electoral vote from Maine's 2nd congressional district for Donald Trump. So here to dissect all of this with me is yet again Sagar Meghani. Sagar, I want to talk first about this call in Pennsylvania. That's one of those states we've been talking about all night. The AP has determined that Donald Trump is the winner.
I thought Pennsylvania was so corrupt that they were.
It's big, not in the least, because it's the biggest prize of those 7 battlegrounds. Is 19 electoral.
People got 4 years of open borders, high inflation. We go to the grocery store. These rich people are just out of touch. They are out of touch with what even immigrants, even Hispanics, Latino, whatever you want to call them. Even black people are finally like, yeah, I don't like all of these immigrants taking what little jobs we have, what little opportunities we have in the inner cities. They don't like it. But immigrants will vote. They have family values. They don't want a female president, right? You know, they're scared of World War III.
Yeah, when you look at a place like Michigan, it's the area around Detroit.
We're sick of these forever wars.
Wisconsin is Milwaukee County. So
we're sick of being lied to.
We've talked about Maricopa County in Arizona. That always takes a while. And you have Nevada. Those are the 4 remaining battlegrounds. But the paths to victory that the Harris campaign had talked about have all but gone away. They really needed Pennsylvania.
They got him at 267. They're really holding out. It's like Alaska's 3. Boom, he's at 270.
They were having a watch party at her alma mater here in Washington at Howard University, and they came out and said, okay, races are too close to call. Still a lot of votes to be counted.
He's probably getting all the other ones, though.
Very much like what happened.
Every battleground. That's insane.
In 2016, almost verbatim, the words we heard tonight from Cedric Richmond that we heard from John Podesta.
John Podesta, what a creep.
That turned out. The Harris campaign was obviously very somber as these results started coming in.
Thank you so much. Stay close by because as this vote counting comes on, we may have more updates.
Been up all night.
Bring to everyone. Thank you for being with us. We will bring you more AP race calls and election night updates when we come back. Stay tuned. As you just heard, that was former President Donald Trump declaring victory in remarks to his supporters gathered in West Palm Beach, Florida. The Associated Press has not yet declared a winner in the U.S. presidential race.
Whatever.
Just before Trump came out to address his supporters, we brought you his comments live.
Harris didn't even address hers.
For the former president. That adds another.
We should go look at Harris. Let's see, sad CNN.
It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected.
CNN called it.
Beating Vice President Kamala Harris.
Wow.
Making a political comeback unlike any in modern American politics. Now, we can make this projection now because CNN projects that Donald Trump has won Wisconsin.
He gave him Wisconsin.
Right there, currently ahead by 30,000 votes with 99% of the vote in.
Oh,
Mr.
wow.
Trump is only the 2nd former president in U.S. history.
Kind of weird how all these extra ballots didn't show up this time.
Impeachments in his first term, followed by unprecedented criminal indictments and felony convictions. Mr. Trump scoring a landmark victory as he now heads back.
Landmark victory.
Divided nation. Again, CNN projects that Donald J. Trump is elected.
That's how miserable people have been the last 4 years.
Let's go over.
They said, we'll take the felon.
At the wall here, we can see with Wisconsin, Donald Trump now has 200.
I'm so glad
votes. Harris with 219.
Americans are not as
70 to win. He is now over that mark. The 10 electoral votes in Wisconsin puts him over that threshold, and CNN now considers him the president-elect of the
CNN, man.
Of America. Let's go over to the magic wand.
Put it in the.
Let's talk about Wisconsin because those votes from Milwaukee that we were promised.
I'm gonna get it so it's not shaking.
The number that
I have stayed up all night. I was going to bed, and then all of a sudden I realized he was winning. I was like,
What we've been waiting
what?
for throughout the course of the night has been a significant chunk of vote in Milwaukee had been outstanding. What we saw about 5 minutes ago was 109,000 votes.
It's crazy.
That came in.
Look how many more people will vote in a city for a Democrat. They tried to cheat there. Look.
That vote broke down about 80% Harris to 20% Trump.
They tried to stuff. It's so obvious they do stuff like that in those big cities.
Fairly couple points amount, not a dramatic amount, but a fairly couple points amount. There was still some vote outstanding, but obviously this was enough for our decision desk to make the calculation that Donald Trump's 30,000 plus vote lead right now was enough to call the state of Wisconsin, give Donald Trump, project Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. I think what this doesn't change, despite the fact more than 100,000 votes came in a Democratic county, that vote split 80-20 for Harris. That margin, while it is significant,
100,000 votes.
What Joe Biden was doing in 2020, and so it's the similar
went
story.
80-20.
Dramatic as it had been.
You really buy that?
In Milwaukee County, like we've seen in some other urban areas.
No.
County right now is still holding in that space. Philadelphia is still holding in that space as well, but underperforming in Milwaukee County by a point or around a point. At the same time, there's underperformance. Or matching margins in a place like Dane County, the second largest county in the state, a Democratic stronghold. Joe Biden back in 2020 won this 75.5%. Harris running about 0.6 of a point behind him. And the reason
it like shows how bad they cheated.
Areas around vote drivers like Waukesha. Look, what's interesting about Waukesha, if you push up into the more rural parts of Wisconsin, Donald Trump's running up big margins, not a ton of vote. Waukesha, Washington, and Ozaukee, we call them the WOW counties. These are the urban counties around Milwaukee, where there's been some view, and I think there's been some midterm years where Democrats have said Ozaukee in particular is that type of demographic makeup, that type of median income makeup that we can really make some inroads here. Donald Trump lost a little bit of ground here back in 2020. He won it by a little over 12 points, but holding more or less the margin, shedding a little bit here. Actually doing better over here in Washington County. Waukesha, crucial, Waukesha, as they like to say, third largest county in the state. So in these big vote drivers, the Democrats thought they could make inroads, pushing out of their urban and suburban areas into the ex-urban areas. They simply didn't.
Normally when we just project the winner of the presidential race, it would be a huge historic moment. I will say that it's been so clear over the last few hours he was trending this way and maybe doesn't land with the same boom that it would have otherwise. And that's because of what we're seeing in these other so-called blue wall
It's so
states.
red.
Let's just check
it's
on
like
Michigan,
crazy.
Which we haven't called
it's
yet.
like...
Where that's trending.
So 95% in right now. Donald Trump with 116,503 vote lead. The question,
your red wave.
In these moments in time, race hasn't been called yet. You see a lead like that in Michigan, which is significantly larger than Donald Trump had when he first shattered the blue wall back in 2016.
I wasn't expecting it to be. I thought it was going to be much closer.
Looking at the biggest blue bubble, that's where the most vote is outstanding.
No more words in yet. I know. As a European, I'm so happy Trump won. I know. My mother was trying to tell me the world thinks we're a laughing stock. I said, no, you're wrong. I said, my mom voted for Harris. And she has no money. I paid for her Lyft ride. I paid for her Lyft ride so she could go vote for Harris. I did not vote for Harris.
By 4+ points. And I think the question is this a composition or makeup of the vote up to this point?
Told my mom, I said, you know, you're believing all this propaganda. I said, the world is so happy.
In this county is Dearborn.
Not everybody, but other countries very much support Trump. I've heard it from people.
Whether or not that has an effect as well. So we're going to have to wait and see as that vote comes in. That's really what we're waiting on right now. The other place where if you're a Trump voter, you're looking at right now, this is the 2020 map, flip back to 2024, 7% outstanding. And this is a place where not only is Donald Trump running up a margin in a Republican stronghold, he's blowing out his 2020 and 2016 margin.
At this point, somewhat academic, at least in the race, the official race for the White House, because we now do project that Donald Trump has been elected President of the United States. Phil, thank
President-elect Donald Trump.
Huge element important story, and there are still super important races for the Senate and Congress, which we will get to in a minute. In the meantime, let's go over to Casey and her panel. Now that we have projected a winner,
She's
Casey,
pissed. Like,
we have indeed
all the women
the history this morning, 5:30
are like
a.m.
trying not
on
to cry.
Wednesday, that Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time. This time after having served for 4 years, then disputing the 2020 election, and then of course
It seems so
rallying a
fake.
mob
Doesn't this
to
just seem
try
so
to
scripted
interrupt
and
the
fake?
peaceful transfer of power there. Americans deciding to send him back to the White House for a second term. And Jeff Duncan, as we mark this moment,
Because you didn't have enough Capitol Police. It, like, all this stuff, like, cat's out of the bag. You can't keep lying to us.
Where the Republican Party had a choice about what to do. They could have decided to convict him in his impeachment trial, which would have prevented him from running again in the future. They didn't do that. Kevin McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago, posed with Donald Trump, and it was the beginning of what would become another run for him to the presidency. And of course, now we know how that has turned out. Considering what you lived through, what the country lived through, what do you think it
The
says about
country
us as a
lived
country
through.
that we're here?
Well, I want to start by just a heartfelt congratulations.
We lived through a lot of
Sincere
inflation.
Congratulations to Donald Trump. I've worked for 4 years to try to not elect him as a candidate for our party.
Oh, that's
So
a
as
humbling
president,
moment
he won the
for
race
you,
and he
sir.
did it the hard way. I never would have thought we would have been here. I think tens of millions of Americans, including Republicans, never thought we would have been here. You just add up all of the baggage along the way on the time in office and the time out of office.
See, they're so trying not to like cry. Like,
It's uncomfortable for somebody like me who is a lifelong conservative to watch this happen. But
oh,
it is
he
what it
almost
is.
cried.
The ball's in his court. What's he going to do with this? Is he going to wreck the car because he wants to and because he can?
No.
Is he going to sow chaos and confusion and build anger?
That
Or is he
coffee
going to
smells
actually
good.
take
Do
the
I have
time
any?
to try to fix stuff? And he's that one personality that can actually do this. Like if he just changed course.
I really hope he does. I really hope he's less divisive, honestly.
That he doesn't agree with. It would send.
Oh, look, we got Daphne from Scooby-Doo over here. She dyed her hair.
Right, I was gonna say, what do we think? That doesn't seem to be his mojo, right? That's not his deal, right? He doesn't kind of heal and bring people together and say,
Yeah, but you guys do.
let's come together.
You guys do.
I think, Jeff, you said something earlier about solving problems. What concerns me is I don't think he cares about really solving problems except for the most expedient one of not going to jail, basically. I mean, when he was talking about tariffs, what have we heard? That's going to bring inflation back up. It's going to be bad for the economy, bad for jobs. So
they're trying to get us to buy less crap from China that just breaks and goes in landfills.
In the day-to-day lives
and actually buy like products that hold up.
I hear what folks are saying about. I agree, America. This is what you want. This is what you got. This is who you are. And
this is who we are.
You have to live with the consequences.
We lived with the consequences of what you guys did to us.
We could have a national abortion ban. Women are going to have to.
That is such propaganda. There's no national abortion. Shut up, lady.
Try to bring people together or try to work across the aisle, and given the way things seem to be going with the congressional races, he may not have to.
I used a hopeful tone.
These guys.
We always talk about these things of bringing people together, and I don't know if that's necessarily the aims of politics. You need to.
No, it's not the aim. Duh. There you go.
President Biden bringing the country together after 3.5 years.
Right?
Republicans who would say, hell no. When you spent 3.5 years criticizing these people, calling them racist.
I think he voted for Trump. He's secret Trumper right there.
They've shown force. They've won. They've rejected the elitism that comes out of Washington.
He voted for Trump.
They rejected the elitism that has
you
come
can tell
from the
sometimes.
establishment, and they've made it clear we want to go in a different direction. And I don't know why we keep ignoring this reality.
Thank you.
Won again by a very sizable margin for a reason.
Thank you.
And I think
this is blurry.
Concerns that people continue to say
that's better
about our party establishment, Jeff, about the Democratic Party establishment, is not going to change things. What propelled this man to the White House in 2016 is still there. It is still
this
there.
guy's speaking truth. Some of these guys, you can tell, have
to serve those grievances.
I think the thing. Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, I was just going to say.
They're so polite.
That sources are saying to me is it wasn't just that Republicans rehabilitated Donald Trump, but Democrats, including most especially the Biden White House, gave him an opening.
Political analysts.
To come back.
These
The
are
fact
political
is
analysts.
That Joe Biden, when inflation was coming back, they were very dismissive
Joe
of
Biden.
concerns. They called it transitory. When it looked there was potential for COVID to come back in the form of Delta and Omicron, they held the celebration in the White House South Lawn, called it Independence from COVID Day. There was Afghanistan.
Yeah.
There was the
Notice how
denial of
COVID
serious
disappeared.
about the crisis. And all of those governing issues.
It just disappeared, just like Trump said it would.
I'm just reflecting
One day
on
it'll
the views of
disappear. He
people
said
within
that.
the administration as they're reflecting on
Because he
tonight.
knew.
They now feel that the administration sometimes treated it as a PR problem instead of an actual.
He also
Well,
knew it was
absolutely created that
where it
enemy.
was
What we
created.
saw polling during the Republican primary was that the primary message being used against Trump by his opponents, by Ron DeSantis, by Nikki Haley, was Donald Trump's gonna lose. He's a surefire loser. Go with me. I can be a winner. And yet in every poll I saw, when you asked Republican voters, who do you think has the best chance to beat Joe Biden? They'd say Donald Trump. Do you think that Donald Trump will beat Joe Biden? Those numbers were through the roof. Republicans felt confident that in a Donald Trump versus Joe Biden matchup, that Donald Trump was going to wipe the floor with Joe Biden. And that's why they felt confident saying,
She's
I
so
love Donald
pissed. This
Trump.
girl's so
You're not
pissed.
scaring me with this argument that he's going to lose. I think he's a winner. And they went ahead with him as their candidate.
One of the things that we also need to reflect on is Donald Trump is a very, very, very flawed man. And I don't think that can be lost on where we are today. I mean, you literally have someone who
Joe Biden.
I don't want to run down the resume of who Donald Trump is in terms of the felonies and,
The
inciting
felonies.
insurrection and
He
criminal
didn't
charges
do
that
that,
feels like
though.
now will go away because he now controls the
They
Department of
didn't
Justice, or
like have enough Capitol
the
Police
things with Stormy Daniels, or all of these things that are kind of baked into the cake.
baked
But as
into
a
the
country,
cake.
you asked a very
His
big question, Casey.
affair
We
with
became
Stormy
numb
Daniels.
to the lack of care.
I could care less.
And it's
I want.
fascinating to me because I know
I want to start
religious
paying
conservatives
$1.99 a gallon of milk
will
again.
go to the mat for Donald Trump, and that's what I don't necessarily.
I want
understand.
$1.49 carton of eggs.
Particularly the white male evangelical, and what we saw today were white women come out. I think
There
that
were a lot
this
of people of color, sir.
was betting that white women would support her in a way unlike how we felt they left Hillary Clinton at the altar in 2016. We thought that was going to be vastly different, but in fact it wasn't. Rural white women, college-educated white women, suburban white women.
I'm a suburban, college-educated.
Phil, we're talking about, they just didn't come home. And the question is, when you have someone who is
Harris couldn't put together a coherent interview or rally. I know, it was crazy.
No one who literally with
I thought she was going to win.
would say, I want my child to grow up and be like Donald Trump.
But I think at the end, as everybody goes through this election and is trying to figure out
Oh,
what
wow.
differently, I am sure there's going to be a lot of instinct to say,
That
"Gosh,
guy-
if only we just told Americans more of how Donald Trump was a terrible person and so and so." And I just think you have enough voters who are telling us in the exit polls,
Yeah, get
I
it.
don't like Donald Trump personally, but I'm voting for him anyway.
There you go. Finally, policy
I'm looking
over personality. Although, what personality did Mamala
what you're saying
have?
is politically prudent. But you asked, what questions do we learn as a country? And we literally have one of the most fundamentally flawed men that we've ever put in a position of power back there.
I don't know about that,
And all I
though.
have to
That's
do
a
is
bolt.
point to the
That's
rhetoric,
you.
not from Democrats. I'm not making this up. I can point to the rhetoric from Republicans on January 7th
Yeah.
and talk about what type of man this is.
I think that's the problem. I think Donald Trump, judged as a candidate, is almost like a Republican god, but judged as an actual executive isn't. And I think that's the problem. And he's got this very fragile period of time.
They
for the
never
Republican Party where if he
covered
doesn't get to
anything
that,
he did good.
his favorabilities are going to start to go down. You'll see that.
He had an unprecedented peace treaty in the Middle East that they
To your
ignored.
point, Ronald Reagan would roll over in his grave if he listened to this, well, we won, and so we're just going to lock in and get our way, this 80-20 idea. And I think there's this gravitational pull that's happening in one segment of the Republican Party where, you're with me 80% of the time, you're a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor. That
Oh,
mentality is
video of
lost.
Kamala Harris election speech. Staffer goes viral. I got to see that one.
Necessarily, but I do think when you talk
Wow.
to a lot of rural Republican voters about the Republican Party,
This guy's
the whole
smart,
Tea
though.
Party movement itself, they will say the establishment wing of the party, they have completely forgotten about us. We turn out and vote every
This guy
single
makes
election to
sense.
empower these people, and they go to D.C. and they adopt policies and legislation and rhetoric that is completely irrelevant to mobilizing and uplifting us. And I hear that often. I spend a lot of time with Trump voters, and I talk to them about why they're so angry with our party.
There you go. You got to talk to each other.
Going all the way back to Ronald Reagan, about all of the failures of the party writ large, and say, you know what, maybe I don't like Donald Trump. Maybe I don't like some of the rhetoric he uses. But you know what, sure, Michael, he's putting a spotlight on all of the failures from George W. Bush and the wars, and my son was killed, and the trillions of dollars we spent. Or I'll go back to the Gingrich era, and they said they were going to do this in terms of morality, and look what the hell happened. And folks are still angry about those things, Jeff. And I think the failure was on us.
Voice of Reason on CNN.
Address those
He'll
things.
probably get fired.
And we never got around to it, as long as we were winning elections.
I just think in a place of anger is a horrible place to make decisions and set policy, and that's the juxtaposition.
He didn't
of the party. There's
make
this angry
it.
voice
No.
that's trying to set policy and direction, and that's what resonates with Donald Trump as a campaigner, but not as an
But a
executive.
lot of people in our party are angry, Jeff. And
Two
why
things can be right.
There you go.
They can be angry and they can be wrong.
That's fair, but why haven't we as a party attempted to reconcile that? Why haven't we?
This
We
guy
had the
is
Tea Party movement.
smart.
There was a clear opportunity for us to
He's
figure
too
out what the
smart
hell
for
are we doing wrong
CNN.
as a party.
This
Why
guy
are
is
so many
like,
people in
you're
our
going
party
against the
looking at
script, buddy.
leadership and saying, wait a minute here, you're still moving in the wrong direction.
They cut him off. They cut him off. Gotta cut him off when they start speaking truth, right? The heck is this? Where's my remote?
The Choice, a frontline tradition for over 30 years. Now in this historic election.
The 2024 campaign is
This is interesting.
Through years of interviews, the moments that shaped the candidates.
This is for Donald Trump a chance to go out the winner he must be.
Kamala Harris demands respect. If it's not given to her, she demands it.
It's about the country that you want.
The choice could not be more stark.
The Choice 2024, Harris versus Trump. In a nation divided, two very different
Those are some
candidates
interesting
facing
signs that say nothing but Kamala.
off. A vice president with a meteoric rise, who shattered barriers along the way. A former president with decades in the spotlight, always determined to be the winner at any cost.
And we fight.
Where do I
Fight
put
like
the
hell.
remote?
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
I had a cup of coffee here. I didn't know I had.
Throw up our
What the heck
hands
was
when
that?
It's time to roll up our sleeves and fight for who we are.
One seeking vindication, promising a return to greatness.
And we will make America great again.
And honestly, I think he's gonna work hard, and I think
A greater future.
he's gonna do a better job.
Not going back.
I hope his cabinet keeps him
2024.
a little less divisive, saying things that piss people off, even though sometimes it's really funny when he says some funny things, but we shouldn't be
Tell me
so.
about the early days of Donald Trump. What kind of a family life do you have? I mean, did you go outside and play ball, or did you have what we call a normal life, a normal upbringing?
Well, Rona, I think I was probably brought up in a very normal fashion. I had brothers and sisters. I had wonderful parents, wonderful family, really very wonderful family.
There's a cute kid.
Are you like your dad?
Well, I hope so. I have a very
Oh, looks
wonderful
like my
father.
son. That's weird.
And
I
I
hope.
hope I'd be somewhat like my father.
What's he like?
Strong, dynamic gentleman.
Is he loving, kind, giving?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the media was nicer in the 70s, right?
Fred Trump was a machine. I mean, he was a human machine. He was driven beyond whatever the description of driven could ever mean. And when you look at the picture of Fred and you look at Donald, you see the great resemblance between the two.
Now I see it.
And when you think about
That's
Fred's energy, you see how it is
angry
channeled
kid. That's
through Donald.
If you met my grandfather, he was a quite cheerful person.
Mary Trump is a psychologist who has been publicly critical of her relatives.
He seemed fairly lighthearted, But he was in control of everything. Life is a zero-sum game. There's one winner. Everybody else is a loser. If you're not winning, you're losing. Unfortunately,
Interesting.
he didn't just have that philosophy in the context of his business. He ran his family that way.
I can be kind of like
The way the game got played in his household
competitive.
was, if you did not win, you lost. And
I try to
losing
tell
was
my
you got
kids
crushed.
that,
Losing was you
but
didn't matter. Losing was you were nothing.
not everyone gets
In the
a
beginning,
participation
Donald wasn't
trophy,
the winner
man.
of the family. He had to fight for his place behind his older brother Freddie.
Donald Trump was never going to be the guy in charge of the Trump empire.
Wow.
Donald Trump was not groomed for that. That's not what Fred Trump wanted.
Wow.
Fred Trump knew from the start that his namesake, Fred Jr., would be the one to take over.
My dad was the favorite initially simply because he was the first. He mattered to my grandfather
That's
as
interesting.
an extension of his ambition. So my dad early on was protected in a way Donald wasn't.
Yeah,
Donald acted out, getting all the wrong kinds of attention.
that's what my son does.
Donald was always the kid in the family
Yes.
who would start throwing birthday cake at all the parties, that you would build up a tower of blocks. He would come knock your blocks down.
Oh,
I think the troublemaking level now would seem
wow.
laughable.
I like the
He was not a
psychology,
serious
though.
student, and he liked to clown around. He liked to get attention.
Finally, a pivotal moment. His father sent him away.
Father sent him away. See?
Military school.
I've been threatening that with my son. I got a
He's
strong-willed
the one
son.
child of 5 to be banished to this austere life. Goodbye luxury, goodbye mom
Yep.
and dad, brothers
Yep.
and sisters. Hello, drill sergeant.
Childhood abandonment.
He talks about it as almost this rite of passage. He said to me that when he arrived at the military academy,
That's why he has
for the first time in his
narcissistic
life, someone slapped him in the
personality
face when he got
traits. I
Unlike a
still
lot of
voted
kids
for
who
him.
Get shipped off to such a place. He liked it. Apparently, he really liked it. He liked the accountability. He liked the kind of clarity of it, and he liked that there was a medal and a prize for everything.
Gosh, that
His
sounds like
mother
my
told me that
son.
he was never homesick.
Oh my God.
And he became a leader of the cadets. He became one of the student leaders who had a number of kids under
Wow.
him in the dormitories, and he ruled the dormitory life with an iron fist.
There's this great picture of him
This is
leading the
kind of
cadets
fascinating.
marching down Fifth Avenue. Somehow he acquired a zest for life that's very deep and very real, that allows him to sort of work his
So
way
he
through
was
every
in military
challenge.
school. Everyone says he was a draft dodger, but he got sent off.
Kamala Harris grew up across the bay from San Francisco.
The United States continues its arms buildup to South Vietnam.
Berkeley was the liberal epicenter of America.
Dewey Newton, the leader of the militant Black Panther Party, will go on trial July 15th.
During the 60s and the 70s, Berkeley was a very diverse community. Diversity in terms of food and art and music. You could hear the Hare Krishna marching down the streets,
That's how
playing their tambourines.
Kamala Harris
Across
grew
the
up.
street, you may hear African drummers on congas. So that kind of gives you a sense of the environment that Kamala and I grew up in.
Stacey Johnson Baptiste is Kamala Harris's oldest friend.
Kamala and I first met in kindergarten, and we became friends instantly, and our mothers became really close friends. So going back 55 years.
Kamala's parents.
Oh, Kamala's like
Shamala
60
and
years
Donald,
old.
were
I didn't know
both
that.
immigrants.
They met on the campus of UC Berkeley. They were these two people from opposite sides of the world. Her father grew up in Jamaica. Her mother grew up in India. And they were very united in this fight for a
Interesting.
better future.
My parents often brought me in a stroller with them to civil rights marches.
I have young memories of a sea of legs moving about, of the energy and the shouts and the chants.
Interesting.
And I, for one, appreciate the support that you here at Berkeley have given to the civil rights struggle.
My mother would tell us, fight systems in a way that causes them to be fairer, and don't be limited by what has always been.
Yeah, her mom's full-blown Indian. So she's half Indian, half
She was
Jamaican.
19 when she came from Chennai, India, by herself as a woman in the 1960s. Shamala was a cancer research scientist.
Shamala
And cancer research
was her
passion, and raising her daughters was her passion.
Shamala was
By the
Kamala's.
time Kamala was 7, her parents were divorced. Shamala would be a single mother to her daughters Kamala and Maya.
That
her
would
father was increasingly distant, pursuing his career as an economist and academic.
Okay.
Kamala was
Yeah, and he was a Marxist
mother.
economist.
But her mother also knew that, you know, she was raising these biracial girls in a country that viewed race through a binary lens.
I'm sure she heard as many names as I heard, you know, and a lot of my teasing was from black kids. And it was, you know, because I was mixed. I had a white mother.
See? That happens.
She talked about
That does happen.
having suffered racial slurs.
It did back
for
then.
both
Where
of
it
her
was
cultures.
worse. It was worse.
She had received racial slurs for being a black person.
And I don't
racial
agree with any
slurs
of
for being
that. So
someone of South Asian
that's
descent.
not my stance. To clear the record. on that.
Kamala is very clear that she is Indian and black. But it was very important for Shamla to make sure the girls grew up and knew about their black heritage, and because they would be viewed as black girls.
Okay.
Ms. Shamla relied on the safety net of the African American community to help raise those babies. A young woman of color, single mom, academic, lived in a
Okay.
black neighborhood and had a community around her to support the growth and the cultural development of these children. Her
Okay.
mother sent her to Miss Sheldon's daycare. That tells you a lot. The Sheldon family has been a neighborhood daycare oasis for single moms for decades. I think they've closed
I'm
up
a
shop.
single mom.
But listen, that's all you gotta tell me. We were taught at the Shelton School.
I still
about
voted for
black
Trump,
leaders
but-
and scientists, and just understanding, you know, what it means to be black
I don't
in
think
this country. We had a really deep
Biden and Harris did a
understanding
good
and
job
teaching and appreciation for our, you know, black
with the time they
community
had.
and the black culture. Mrs. Shelton would quickly become a second mother to Maya and me.
Later in life, on her political rise, she'd be sworn in with her hand on Miss Shelton's Bible.
She had wonderful examples right in her own mother who counter any negative impacts from being a black child in America and being raised in the midst of racism. When you have a strong, nurturing
Like, I know
foundation
racism
and
was-
environment, then it does build your
has been a
confidence
problem.
and it strengthens your inner
I just wish
resolve.
people could move on from
Having a mother like
from
Kamala's
the
mother, it makes you
physical
strong.
surface superficial things about people, like the color of their skin. I just really, yes, we have.
Upon leaving military school, Donald would begin to surpass his brother Freddie.
Wow.
As my father grew older, his personality became clear. He was sensitive. He was kind and generous. He liked hanging out with his friends who adored him. And maybe worst of all, he had interest outside of the family business. My grandfather understood none of that.
He wasn't a killer. His father told the boys to be killers, but Freddie was never a killer. He wasn't hyper aggressive. He wasn't hyper competitive.
That's
My grandfather treated him
Trump's
so poorly,
brother.
with such little respect, and made his life miserable. Donald was able to watch what my grandfather considered the mistakes that my dad made.
Donald Trump is his dad. Okay.
He took that lesson to heart and became the killer, the tough guy, the person who would do anything in his power to be the winner, could never be wrong, could never admit a mistake, and avoided being kind.
Right.
Because all of those things in my grandfather's
Could be
universe
wrong,
spoke to an
yeah.
unforgivable weakness.
I studied psychology.
And my grandfather finally started to see in him
Personality
the son he wanted.
disorder is, I mean, but somebody
Donald would
can
become
have.
the winner, assuming
He's
Freddie's
got
place next to his
narcissistic
father.
traits, but that doesn't mean he's a fool.
The older sister,
A lot of people do,
Marianne,
especially with
told
trauma
me
like that
Donald
that's
was
formed.
like a hot wind at Fred Jr.'s back. He didn't quite throw him under the bus, to mix metaphors, but he was certainly right behind him.
Yeah, he wanted
Donald
to.
was standing right there and ready to take over.
He looks like his son.
Do you think you have to have a killer instinct in order to be successful?
I think you have to have some, to a large extent. I think you do have to have at least a winning instinct. I think that the world is made up of people with either killer instincts or without killer instincts, and the people that seem to emerge are the people that are competitive and driven and with a certain instinct to win.
My grandfather
True.
shoved Donald's success in my dad's face a lot. And I think he found that difficult.
Fred Jr. left the family real estate business and became an airline pilot and an alcoholic.
My dad had just bought in hook, line, and sinker into the family's assessment of my father as an alcoholic failure who never accomplished anything.
Okay.
And their line about Donald as this extraordinary, self-made, brilliant businessman.
Donald told me that he and his father had perhaps been way too
Donald
hard on
says
him.
he doesn't drink,
They
though.
used to say to him, because he was an airline pilot, "What's the difference between what you do, Freddie, and driving a bus?"
At age 42, Fred Trump Jr. died of a heart attack.
You had a brother, Fred Jr., who died.
Oh.
Your brother was open, too vulnerable maybe, drank. Did this make you, I don't know, close up, keep it all inside?
I learned a lot of things from Fred, but I did learn for myself that I don't want to be open. I don't want to make myself vulnerable.
Yeah, it can be tough. I haven't.
When Kamala Harris was 12, her mother moved the family to Montreal, Canada.
Canada?
Her mom got passed over for a job that she thought she deserved. And so rather than sit around and brood about it, she got a job at McGill University up in Quebec. And so she packs her two daughters off.
Going to Montreal, Canada, it's all white predominantly, and you're having to make all new friends and figure your way out.
For her to be uprooted from her community.
Hey, I was uprooted.
It's such a sensitive moment.
I was uprooted at 14, and I lived with all black people, and some were mostly black. 'Cause I lived in group homes.
She kind of was always the type that would embrace something, take
I
it
have a
on, take it like
unique
challenge, and
story.
Wanda Kagan became Kamala's new best friend.
So
she made the best out of it, which is what she did with them coming to Quebec.
That's why I'm
Because
not
French, having to go to
racist
French
like
school,
that. Like
and the cold weather.
lived with black people, and they became like my family.
She talked about the life she left behind a lot. That was another commonality we had. My family was in America.
Don't forget your passport.
That's actually what was so nice about our friendship, seeing how she and myself navigated ourselves to fit into that world of two different worlds and bridge
This
the
is
gap
an interesting documentary, actually, though, about how Kamala and Trump grew up. because then you
because
can
it was important to get out of the comfort zone. It was
understand like
important
where
to
they're
be in a new
coming from,
space.
personality
It's have
wise.
to rebuild sort of your sense of identity at that very, very pivotal age where you're still trying to understand who you are and what you believe. Now you have to figure it out. Now you have to say, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to operate?
Their friendship would play a crucial role in shaping Kamala's sense of purpose.
She used to bring lunches to school for me, and I'd get to have the lunches because I would be hungry sometimes. Yeah. I think it was those little kinds of things that she was able to pick up on, that there was something going on or something wrong in my home life.
Tell me about it.
I was being abused at home, both physically and sexually, and I finally, she would tell me that what's wrong, you know, and that I didn't see myself some days, and so once I was confronted with her out and out asking me, I decided to tell her that I was being molested and abused at home. Her first reaction was, "How long have you been going through this, Wanda?" And then once I talked about it with her, then she was like, "Well, you're just gonna have to come and stay with us." I was really emotional and heartfelt when they said I could come and stay with them.
I gotta get off here in like
It wasn't just that I went to live with her. I mean, I just felt like I saw that passion and that compassion in her of basically she was like taking a stand and fighting for my rights back then, 40 years ago, to, you know, do what I wanted, to be able to do what I wanted with my body.
Oh.
She was a child too, 15, 16 years old, with such a powerful voice and fighting for what's right.
Even back then, Harris was thinking about how she could fight for people's rights, how she could fight for justice.
Well, I mean, she became a prosecutor, but
sort of this moment that she had
prosecution's not fighting for people's justice. She put, I don't know.
Donald Trump was his father's apprentice, heir to a multi-million-dollar real estate organization.
They had a vast empire in Queens and Brooklyn of residences and rental apartments. I mean, it was really quite an establishment.
But early on, there was a crisis.
There came a day in 1973 when the federal government sued Donald and Fred by name and their company for racial bias. This was one of the greatest racial bias cases of its time.
This was a particularly egregious case because
there
the
was
Trump organization had allegedly put
redlining stuff
to connote people of color
happened.
who were applying for
That's why they say he's racist. Okay.
The government.
I don't really think he is.
They had the Trump organization now. There were multiple Trump employees who confessed that they had been instructed to divert black applicants for apartments, to discourage them, to tell them that apartments had been rented when they hadn't been.
Donald Trump's regular lawyers tell him
back then, yeah,
there were do the right thing, do what you're supposed to do under the law, and Trump's not happy with that advice.
Redlining.
He wanted to fight back.
But then it's a tough subject. It's a tough subject, you know.
One of the places to see and be seen in Manhattan was called Le Club. Donald Trump walked in, and Roy Cohn was
the inner cities are just.
Did. And Trump said,
"Look at that guy's nose.
I know about
Gosh,
you. Can I ask you a question?"
Golly.
Roy Cohn had 20 years of being a really aggressive, no holds barred, go for the jugular, fight back.
I mean,
anybody says something to you, throw it back at them guy. He was famous for that behavior.
Still, Biden wasn't.
And as legend has it, Donald stuck out his hand and introduced himself and said, "My father is being sued by the Justice Department over this race discrimination. What should we do?"
And he said, "Listen, I've spent 2 days with these establishment law firms about a case we have. It was a civil rights case. was something, and they were all telling us, give up, do this, sign a decree.
Things
and
were
all
like that,
He
though.
says,
That's
I followed
the
your
problem,
command. You
though.
seem
Everyone.
You're a little bit crazy like I am, and you stand up to the establishment. Can I come see you? And I said, sure.
Because Biden was.
When they met, Roy said to him,
very racist.
You might be guilty. It doesn't matter. Go after the Justice Department. Don't ever admit guilt.
Fight it. You'll kill them. Just deny everything and fight. And Trump was totally taken by that. He hired Roy Cohn as his lawyer.
That was a defining
I gotta go on Trump on this meeting.
Donald Trump was on the ropes. There's no doubt they discriminated. There's no doubt there was wrongdoing. And yet, Roy Cohn showed him that you can turn around a situation just by ignoring the facts and going after your attack. Countersued the Justice Department for $100 million.
I have never, nor has anyone in our organization ever, to the best of my knowledge, discriminated or shown bias in renting our apartments.
So he just denied.
This is a classic example of where Trump begins to demonstrate something he talks about all the time today, which is he's a counterpuncher. So somebody comes after him and says that he's done something nefarious and horrible, and he just goes back at them with all
it doesn't mean,
you know, boom, 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 and admits nothing, never admit anything.
I gotta jump on this meeting.
Never say you made a mistake. Just keep
I mean, you can't when you're getting sued. Sorry, but.
And in fact, he did end up quietly settling out of court. But Roy went on the offensive
he
and
settled.
said this is a victory. Trump was vindicated. He knew.
But if you're gonna go past,
that the court of
then
public
I don't
opinion is
know.
often more important than a court of law.
You gotta look at Harris's failures when she prosecuted people of color. Like, come on, you know, it's just. I gotta jump on my work meeting though.
Donald Trump learned a
I'll
lot
come
of things
back.
from Roy Cohn, but
Thanks for being here.
kind of sum it up by